This is Nick Harris, the National Recruiting Analyst. And yesterday, let's say Monday, he was at Arch Manning's spring practice. We don't get to see a lot of Arch. He doesn't do really any events. So I think a spring practice like this was really important to see. And I kind of want your take on how he looked. And don't say he was just awesome because he's the number one player in the country. What'd you like? What'd you think maybe was a little off? What was kind of your full analysis of seeing Arch Manning in person?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that really stood out was his physical development. His lower body looks fantastic. It looks like what you want from a Power 5 quarterback and what you would want from a number one quarterback in the country. But as far as nitpicking and maybe things I would like to see improvement on. Delivery is a little awkward, but you almost don't question it because his last name is Manning. But it does come out a little weird off the wrist. He kind of brings it out here a little bit rather than over the top, but it kind of works for his short to medium stuff, and on his long balls is kind of where you see that delivery kind of make an effect to his game. But he still really is consistent on those long balls, and he was able to hit his receivers that he's been playing with for most of his life at this point, so they have a lot of rhythm together already. But they were installing a new offense yesterday. It was their first day of spring practice, so he even said after the practice that balls were kind of flying all over the place, getting used to the guys and getting back on the field. But, nevertheless, I think it's a really good showing based on what he did in the fall and just kind of his development since then to where he's at now.
Yeah, that is the balance we're trying to strike. One, we don't want to just give him a pass as the number one player in the country because his last name is Manning. He's got to live up to it. But also, we don't want to be overly critical about every tiny little thing that we see. Because his last name is Manning and he's the number one player in the country. So we have to weigh all of that together. There, by no means is he locked in as the number one player in the country for sure, without a doubt. I think that there have been years in the past where you see a Jadeveon Clowney or you see a Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence was in the same class as Justin Fields, which could have definitely been a much more serious debate. But I think you kind of got locked in and said, this is absolutely the best high school football player in the country, and projects as a phenomenal college player and the number one player potentially in the NFL draft, if not an early first-round pick. Arch Manning has all of those things. He has, and I think as he goes through this process, I think college coaches and NFL executives are going to be dealing with the same thing. Is he Peyton and Eli? Is he not? Does he just have the last name? I think from like a mental standpoint, he's ready for the college game already. The one hesitation I have is that he doesn't play elite competition and he doesn't do major events. So it's hard to get an apples to apples comparison of him against Nico Iamaleava or him against Dante Moore or him against Malachi Nelson or Eli Holstein, who lives down the road. So it's definitely an interesting sort of recruitment just from those factors, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that kind of plays into the Arch Manning recruitment. There's a lot that plays into the Arch Manning ranking and how he stacks up against some of the best quarterbacks in the country. And overall, you take Arch Manning out of the equation, it's a stacked 2023 class at the quarterback position. You mentioned Nico, you mentioned Malachi and Dante, but even deep into the class as you get into like the 150s to 200s, you got Ricky Collins here in the state of Louisiana that's really solid as well. So just top to bottom, really good quarterback talent. And while we did want to see Arch Manning in those national settings at Elite 11 or maybe on the 7-on-7 circuit at some point, while we really wanted to see that, if you're the Manning family, you kind of have everything to lose by going to those things. So, it makes sense. And, they're maybe protecting Arch. That might be the wrong thing to say, but, Arch Manning doesn't really have anything to prove out in the offseason other than getting out to spring practice, showing what he was able to do in front of a ton of reporters and a ton of assistant coaches yesterday. So, that's his proving ground is on his own field. And you mentioned the competition thing. I mean, that was definitely the big strike last year as the season went on from fans and, even some in the recruiting media as well. The competition that he plays in a small private school league here in New Orleans isn't fantastic. He's playing against actual children at times. So next year he is going to get a competition against Maney in week 4. They have Tackett Curtis, a 4-star linebacker who's one of the best players in Louisiana. Tylen Singleton, a 4-star athlete in the 2024 class. So really stacked with talent, and they'll travel to Maney for that game. So I think that'll probably be the best gauge that we can get as rankings experts on how he kind of stands up against Power 5 talent.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. Like if Arch Manning shows up at a national event and looks great. He was supposed to be great. And if he throws one incomplete pass, everybody freaks and it's the end of the world. So there really is no point for him to show up. He doesn't need to show up to do anything, but it's fine. We'll figure out his ranking. We'll figure out where he needs to be. At some point, we need to make the decision. Is he the best high school football player and projects as the best, as having an elite college career and be a first round NFL draft pick, or does someone else? We're going to look probably dumb one way or another. If we put him first, he goes first, that was expected. That was fine. If we put him as the third best quarterback in the class and he goes first, we had him as first and we blew it. So there's no two ways around it. Let's talk recruiting. Everybody's trying to stay involved with him, but this is really a 3-team race, right?
Yeah, I would have to say so. We talked to him after the practice yesterday, and he has 3 official visits that he knows he wants to take, and it's to Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. He said those in that order as well. Texas, the relationship he's built with Steve Sarkisian and quarterbacks coach A.J. Milwee has gone back, quite a ways. He knew Sarkisian from his time at Alabama, is really, connected with him. The family has as well. They've loved their trips to Austin. The family has, a couple connects to the city of Austin as well. So, there's a lot of things playing into Texas's favor, but I think the one thing that's really not is the fact that they're coming off a 5-7 season, didn't even make a bowl game. And there's still a lot of question marks on the field as far as, what Sarkisian and his staff are able to accomplish on the field. But they have Quinn Ewers, potentially Hudson Card if they choose to start him as well for the 2022 season. And Arch is watching very closely. He said he watched the spring game a couple of times, really liked what he saw on the field. Despite, maybe Quinn having a couple of overthrows at times. He really liked what he saw on the field. Will Randall, the tight end at Isidore Newman that, Arch has been kind of in the recruiting process with, he made the trip out to the spring game, and Randall came back with, great reviews from Austin. Talking about Georgia, again, the family really loves the city of Athens. They've had a couple of fantastic trips out there. Kirby Smart and his staff have really preached development to them. 15 guys getting drafted in this past draft class. That's really stood out to, Arch Manning and his family, even if, the quarterback position maybe hasn't been as strong as some other places in recent years. And then Alabama, Nick Saban, kind of speaks for itself. He said it's a machine in Tuscaloosa. It's a machine at Alabama. And at this point, he's just kind of, waiting to see what happens on official visits. And from what I can tell, he's waiting to see what happens on the field early in the 2022 season. I mentioned it in the article that we put up on rivals.com last night, just on, everything with Arch. I think fans should start preparing for a fall decision. His comments are kind of alluding to the fact that he wants to see some things happen on the field. And I think it really points to Texas, because that's the only one of those 3 schools that still has a lot of question marks on the field. He wants to see what they're able to bring to the field early in the 2022 season, and they'll have a really good opportunity against Alabama in week 2.
That's been my theory, is that Texas leads, and this is why. Because he knows what he'd get at Georgia or Alabama and wouldn't have to wait any longer to make a decision. He wants to see if Texas struggles out of the gate. He wants to see what the offense looks like. He wants to get a feel for what it looks like under Quinn Ewers. He wants to maybe get there for a game day and get the vibe of what it feels like. Alabama is coming in, and that's going to be an interesting situation early in the season to see if he gets it. He could have already been committed. He doesn't seem like a guy that wants to go through this and deal with it. So if he wanted to go to Georgia, he knows what he's getting. They're coming off a national championship. He knows what the offense is going to look like. At Alabama, he knows exactly what the situation is. He knows who he's going to be playing for. And that's why I think Texas has a little bit of an advantage, because he wants to see how they look on the field before anything else. Who knows? We'll see. 3 weeks ago, I thought he was going to end this after spring practice. It looks like it's going to go into the season. We'll see how it goes. If Texas plays well, I think they have a bigger advantage. If they play poorly, I think Georgia has an advantage. But people at Alabama are telling me that they're definitely not out of it either. And, the Manning family, the no nonsense, the going to play for, the greatest coach of all time is interesting too. So, Nick, you have to hit the road to Baton Rouge. I have to jump on conference calls. It's been good talking to you.
One.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate it, Adam.
All right, see you.